Suntrap Forest Centre has been delivering outdoor learning for over 50 years. We've taken thousands of school children and family groups out into the wonderful Epping Forest. We also deliver schools outreach and insect training for staff. We'd like to share with you some inspiration and ideas so that you can take your class out into your local green space, even if it's just a simple school grounds, and enjoy some fantastic learning opportunities. There are so many benefits to outdoor learning. The multisensory nature of the outdoor environment improves children's engagement, their motivation and their concentration in the activity. We never have to work very hard to get them involved in what they're doing outside. The experiences are really memorable because they are hands-on, they're kinesthetic and they're experiential, so they have really deep and lasting impacts. Outdoor learning really lends itself well to interdisciplinary learning, so children are developing those systems thinking skills that they need for a real world scenario. But it's not just the educational attainment that is raised by being outdoors. Children gain so many holistic benefits as well. The variety and the rhythm of the outdoor environment, the natural world, really helps children's well-being, their mental well-being. Just being outside in the sunshine and the fresh air really helps them, and it will help you as a staff as well. And it's great for their physical well-being. Their fine and gross motor skills are developed, but they're just physically active and more healthy when they are spending more time outside, as you well know. And in this current world where we're trying to reduce the spread of COVID-19, it's been shown that the outdoor environment is a better place to be because it's easier for social distancing, there's fresh air, and the sunlight, the UV and sunlight, will actually sterilise items for you. So children can touch the same natural resources that a previous group have a few days ago, and the sun will have done the sterilising for you. Now, one of the perceived barriers to outdoor learning has historically been that it's riskier than a classroom environment. But we all recognise that taking risks is an important part of development, and we wouldn't learn to walk unless we took the risk of falling over. So we just need to take this same balanced approach to outdoor learning. And as you can see from these quotes here, even the professionals that are drawing up legislation recognise this. So to help you out, we would recommend that you do a generic risk assessment for your outdoor learning, especially if you're using similar green spaces in your school environment. And then you can cover both the benefits and the risks to prove why you're doing this in the first place and take the necessary measures. Of course, on the day, you might do a bit of a dynamic assessment, a quick check for litter, or an assessment of the weather, and dress appropriately. We really strongly advise taking the benefit risk assessment approach, because then you can show your parents and carers, governors, why you're doing this, and you can document what the children get from it as well. We'd love to get you started as soon as possible, so here are some tips. First of all, think about where you're going to have your session, and you might want to consider whether you'll need any shelter from the elements. Is it a windy day or a particularly hot day? Your school might want to invest in some sails or parachute, but you can easily rig up a tarpaulin between some trees or posts with a bit of rope. For seating, you might want some extra seating outside. You could use some straw bales, or you could have each child has their own piece of yoga mat or camping mat, and they take that with them each time they go outside. Try to make the whole experience part of the learning. So even just moving from the classroom to the outdoor space, you could be doing your times tables as you march along. You could be making observations. One child could instruct the others with directional language to get from A to B. There are just so many ideas. And we've got a sheet, in fact, on our website with lots of ideas for taking your children outside. In terms of what you do outside, it's not just a case of taking a worksheet outside. So make use of what is out there and work with that. We try to minimize the amount of paper that we're taking outside. But we'd suggest that you start small. Be kind to yourself. So just 5 minutes outside, meet the class at the end of break or lunchtime, and just do the start of your session outside. We've got lots of activities on our website under the Schools and Colleges tab, and you can download those to have them with you. We've also got a suggestion of a pupil pack, so some items that the children could make use of in lots of different ways, and each child could have their own pack so they're not sharing resources. When we're thinking about how we're going to do our session, we want to prepare the class and set their expectations. So make them aware that it's an outdoor classroom, it's not playtime. And they will soon get into the mode of learning outside. Some teachers are concerned about how they're going to record the learning that's taking place. So we would strongly recommend that you take a camera or an iPad out with you, and then you can take photos and videos. But you may also get the children to do a little learning journal when they get back to classroom, just a few minutes, drawing or writing about what they've learnt in that session.
Hi, my name's Joe and I'm from Suntrap, and I'm going to talk to you about a few activities you can do with trees. Now, we're really lucky at Suntrap that we are in Epping Forest, but you don't have to have a forest as a resource to be able to do these activities. You could do it in a public park, a garden, even a school playground will probably have a tree that you can do this activity with. Now, a really nice way to start these activities off is learning how to identify the different trees. The simplest way probably will be to look at the actual leaf on the tree. Something that makes that a lot easier is using something called a leaf key. Now, this is the most basic key that you can get, and it's simply pictures of different leaves, and you just match the leaf on your tree with the picture, and that will tell you the species. Now, if you're doing this in winter, you'll probably find that a lot of the trees that we have here won't have any leaves on, but you can still make the best of that by just picking up a leaf off the ground, and the chances are that it will belong to the tree above it. In this case, I found this leaf on the ground. Besides the colour being different, I know that the shape and any features on the leaf match the beech tree. Now, you can get some slightly more complex keys. On the back here, we've got one which has a series of yes and no questions. So you start with the very first question, move down the branches, and depending on whether you've answered yes or no, you'll end at the answer at the bottom. This is really good for thinking about how you've actually got to the conclusion of the tree species that you identified it as. So that's something that can make a nice extension rather than just matching pictures. If you're using leaves, it's a really good opportunity to talk about the role they play in actually keeping the tree alive. So if you're teaching about photosynthesis, it's really nice to actually tie that into identifying some different leaves. If there aren't any leaves around that you want to identify or can identify, often seeds and berries and fruits that have fallen off the tree make that a lot easier too. Acorns and conkers are really easy for children to identify, and they're really not going to be confused with something else, so that's something else worth looking at. So if you're teaching about photosynthesis, a nice point to lead on to is to do with the amount of carbon actually stored within a tree. Once you've identified the species of the tree, you can collect a few measurements, such as the height and the circumference of the trunk, and using online calculators you can actually work out the amount of carbon stored within a tree. If you want to learn how to make these measurements, just watch the next clip. Hi, I'm Joe from Suntrap, and I'm going to show you how to measure the circumference of a tree. The only equipment you'll need really is a 1 meter tape, or if you don't have one of those, you can use a piece of string, and all we've done here is we've just tied knots on the string every 10 centimeters. We've just measured these using a regular ruler. You could even do this with a pen or a piece of tape every 10 centimeters. When you found your tree, we found a nice street tree here, you want to make sure that to measure the tree you don't have to step into the road. So just make sure that if it is next to the road, that you don't have to walk onto it. First step, get your tape and find a point on the tree about 1 metre up the trunk. Found a nice spot here. We do have a bit of a knot which makes the tree look wider, so I'm just going to measure just slightly above that where it's the average circumference. I'm going to throw my tape measure around the tree, and you'll notice because the tree's circumference is bigger than 1 metre, my tape doesn't reach. So what you'll need to do is mark a point on the tree of where your measurements start. You can use something like chalk, or I'm going to actually use a leaf. So find a leaf on the ground, and I'm going to find a point where I want to start my measurement. Now this ash tree has some nice fissures in the bark, so I'm just going to find a fissure that I can push a leaf into. That's where I'll start the measurement. And using my finger, I'm going to mark on the tree trunk where that measurement ends, so I know that's the 1 metre point. All I need to do now is measure between my leaf and my fingertip and add that to 1 metre. And that comes up at about 60 centimetres, so the total is 1 metre 60 centimetres. But you could use the string instead. Find on the 2 metre string where the knots end, just count the number of knots, and that will tell us the measurement. Right, now I'm going to show you how to estimate the height of the tree. Now what we're going to do is we're going to imagine that if the tree were to fall over, where the top of it would land, and that would give us a rough estimate of the height of the tree. Now to do this, we are going to measure the height with our steps. So one big step like that would be about 1 metre. 2 normal steps, probably about 50 centimetres. So to estimate where we think the tree would fall, all you have to do is find a rough spot where you think that would be, and see if you can see the top of the tree between your legs. I'll show you what I mean. I can't quite see the tree from here, so I need to move further away. I'm now at a spot where I think I can clearly see the top of the tree. So all I need to do now is measure the distance from where I'm stood back to the tree, and I'm going to do that with big steps like this. Wow! So I estimate the height of this tree to be about 12 metres.
The outdoors is a brilliant place to take maths, and we can use items that are physically in front of us rather than just abstract concepts, and that can really help children. So here are just a few ideas around algebra. For the first one, ask children to collect some natural materials that are fairly flat, so leaves are quite good for this. Even if you're just sticking with leaves, they can pick up different colours and different shapes of leaves. Then give each child a piece of cardboard with some double-sided tape along the top. Ask them to arrange their leaves in a repeating pattern. So here we've got green, green, red, green, green, yellow, and that's a repeating pattern all the way along. Then ask the children to write a letter to represent each item. So here we've kept it really simple. We put a G for green, an R for red, and a Y for yellow. So they write the letters underneath the leaves in this case, all the way along, and see that repeating pattern in a letter format. Then we can turn this into a proper formula. So here we've got 2G, R, 2G, Y. And we've used the 2G to start working with algebra and simplifying the formula. Now you can take this a little further by giving each of these letters a value. So you might decide that G is worth 5,
R is worth 10, Y is worth 2, and the children can actually come up with a numerical value for their pattern. So that's one you can try. And if you want to make it a little bit different, you can do it with flowers as well. So here we have looked at a flower in the classroom. We've worked out all the different parts of the flower so the children know how to identify them, and then each child has found a flower in the playground and they have dissected it. So we've stuck on our sticky tape here 5 petals, and we've written 5 P's underneath. We've got our carpel, so we put C for that, and then 4 little stamen here, so we put 4 S's there. And again, the children have simplified that formula. Again, you can add values to those and do equations with them. So you could say, what is 5P times 1C? Now, you might find that in your school grounds there are limited flowers, and you might find that they don't have all of these features. So you can be a bit flexible with it, but you can also make friends with a local florist who might have some flowers at the end of their lives that they were going to throw out, and they'll quite often give them to you for free if you say what you're using them for. So that's a good tip. Now we can use some larger natural materials, we can use some chunky items as well to lay out patterns. You might want to define a space by bringing out a piece of paper, or you might do it on the playground and lay out a pattern of items. Again, leaf, long leaf, 2 brown leaves and stick here. Now we can make a link between maths and music here, because each of these items the children could come up with a sound for. So this one might be a clap, this one might be a snap, this one might be a shuffle. They can decide, and then they can make the musical pattern from their items. Somebody else can point them out, so I've got to remember now: snap, clap, snap, snap, shuffle. And their friend could be a conductor and point them out. Now if the children do this as a whole group, so the group decides the sound for each item and the pattern, then you can have a whole class orchestra where you call in different groups, point them out as a conductor and call them in, and they will do their pattern. And you can call them in and out, and it's a really nice piece of percussion, so you can record that as evidence, and the children are making a link between maths patterns and music.
I'm going to give you a few tips on how and where you would find some invertebrates, which are a really good point to do some different activities with. We're in Epping Forest at the moment, but you don't have to go into the forest if you aren't able to. Anywhere where you've got something like a piece of dead wood on the ground, you're likely to find some invertebrates living underneath it. Even paving slabs, things like that you might have on a playground, are a good place to start. The equipment that we're going to use for this, I've got a couple of different pots here. These are different options that you might want to use. One that we quite like are these small magnifying pots with this lid, which makes small invertebrates a lot easier to identify, and the fact it has got a lid is really useful because it means that they're not going to escape. However, any pot will do. These are quite good because they are clear, but even just a small plastic cup will do the job as well. Now when you've found your log that you want to look underneath, all you need to do is just simply lift and gently move it out of the way. If it's a really big log, you'll need to help the children do that. Then I'm going to take my pot, lid in one hand, and I can use the lids to encourage any animal I find into the pot. But leaves make a really good alternative just to scoop it inside. Now when I've got my animal, I can use an ID sheet to work out what the animal's called. This is where the magnifying lids come in really useful, because you can identify the different body parts, count the number of legs, which are really key to identifying the name of the animal. What's really important is when you've found your animal and you're finished with the activity, that the log goes back to where you found it. There are a couple of animals that you do want to avoid, so things like bees and wasps you generally won't find when it's a lot colder, but if you do find them, you leave them alone, you won't have any issues, but just make your children aware to avoid animals like that, because we don't want anyone getting stung.
Once you've had a really good look at your invertebrates, there are a few extension activities you can try. You can play a game of 20 questions, or we've got an alternative called Guess My Animal. Each child, once they've identified their invertebrate, needs to keep it a secret from the rest of the class and come up with 3 really good clues about it. Things about its body shape, how many legs it's got, and how it moves are really good places to start. And that will give the rest of the class some good ideas so they can guess that child's animal. Really encourage your children to look at body shape and features rather than colour, because that's what scientists look at when they're classifying animals. So the children have had a good look at those animals, they've paid really close attention to them, they've noted things like legs and body parts. It's a good way to bring in maths. If I've got 2 ladybirds, how many legs have I got? If I've got a woodlouse and a spider, how many legs have I got? Now, if you don't know the answer to this, and you'll be forgiven, we have got a Mini Beast maths sheet on our website, on our Suntrap website, and that's got a few commonly found invertebrates on it with a few little numerical facts, so you can use those and the class can use those to come up with some Mini Beast sums. You might be looking at food chains and what animals eat in your class, so you can use that to group and classify the animals. Really useful to have something like an old bit of white sheet that you can lay out on the ground so the children can bring their animals to that sheet and you've got a clearly defined space. Hopefully this will avoid children just treading on the pots by putting them down randomly. So you might want to group your animals according to what they eat or how many legs they've got. So maybe you've got insects over here and you've got arachnids over here. Or if you want to bring out a couple of hula hoops, you can make a Venn diagram. We've got herbivores over here. We've got carnivores, meat eaters here. Where they overlap would be where you put your omnivores. So I might have some spiders here, maybe some woodlice here, and an ant, good omnivore. Now if you're again not sure what all of the animals eat, you can usually find out a few good facts online. Places like Bug Life and the Woodland Trust will be able to help you out there. A really resource-free activity to do outside is to do a scientific diagram. So again, you can use your white sheet as a background, or just clear away the leaves so you've got an area of just mud and it's really clear to see what you've got. So you could do a diagram of an animal and try to make it as accurate as you can. So we're thinking about things like how many body parts it's got, how many legs it's got. It's got 1 body part here. And if I gave it 8 legs, children using their identification key would be able to tell me that it's Harvest Man. Going back to food chains, we can also use these natural materials to make a proper food chain. So I've got my herbivore and my carnivore here, and we can use our sticks to make some arrows. So I can show the herbivore is eaten by the carnivore. Use some extra natural materials. This is what the herbivore eats. Some nice leaves, and then another arrow, out sticks. We can do the sun, and we could even do a picture of a larger carnivore or omnivore like a robin at the end. So there's lots of things we can do outside, just mainly using natural resources and paying really careful attention to what we've collected. So enjoy those.
Well, we hope that's inspired you with lots of good ideas, but there are many more. So you can have a look on our Suntrap website. Under the Schools and Colleges tab, you'll find our supporting outdoor learning pages. There we've got lots of downloadable activities for different key stages and topics. We've also got further hints and tips and lists of resources that you might find really handy. Now, we'd love to hear from you about how you've been getting on, all your positive experiences in your outdoor learning journey. So you can share those with us on social media. We've got lots of different platforms there. And we hope that you've enjoyed this presentation and that it's inspired you to get outside with your class. Remember, you can start small and let it grow from there.